everyone. This is Leilani Cosson from the Learning Council and a CEO and publisher here. Also an Edu Jedi Grandmaster. I'm proud to be one. We have some of our Edu Jedi joining us today to speak to all of you. We're going to be talking about architecting hybrid learning. And so this is our first panel on this. It's the hottest topic. We just completed our third national survey since we went into quarantine. And this time we had over 18,000 respondents. And 50% of them all wanted to be panelists. We're very choosy about who we invite on because we really want to have the nation hear what's really happening with the leadership nationally with this very uncertain time. I'm going to speak a little bit more about that in a little bit, of trying to go digital or hybrid or something, with regards to how we're delivering learning right now nationwide. Many, many fabulous stories have been coming out in all of these webinars, and we're so proud of all the educators. We want to start with that. We're giving everyone a virtual hug today and telling you that we're proud of you. We have with us today Heather Sherburn, who's the Assistant Superintendent at Lammersville, USC in California. We've always been really super proud of them. They've done some extremely innovative stuff, so we're really happy to have Heather with us. Heather, I've unmuted you and all the other panelists. You can say hello.
Hello, super happy to be here.
And we have Dr. Jeff Dillon, who's the superintendent at Wilder School District in Idaho. Jeff, can you introduce yourself and say hello?
Jeff Dillon from the big metropolis, Wilder, Idaho, southwest part of the wonderful state of Idaho. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with you.
Good, great to have you. And then we also have Dr. Daryl Diamond, who I'm a big fan of, who's the Director of Innovative Learning in Broward County, Florida. Hi, Daryl.
Hi, everyone. Looking very forward to having this conversation with everyone around this subject. It's an important one to be talking about.
We're going to have each of our panelists just sort of let it rip for, 5 to 7 minutes. We're going to be taking questions. I want to go first to Dave Barclay from Hapar and have him share with us because they decided to jump on and underwrite us today. So I want to give him a couple minutes just to introduce what they're doing. It's so interesting to me talking to a lot of the companies in this field right now, what they're doing, because they're talking to a ton of you, just like the Learning Council is, and they're finding out things nationally that are super interesting.
Very good. Can everybody see my screen okay?
I can see it.
All right, great.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Leilani, for having me on today. It's a real pleasure to be meeting with your group here. And again, we're all in this together. Hapara, you may know us as a company that provides kind of monitoring for schools, using Chromebooks or the Chrome browser with the student's desktop and kind of managing that one-to-one situation. But what we found is, you're talking about architecting hybrid learning, and we have found a real good niche with those schools living in the Google ecosystem there. And it's very important for us to help those schools, right? We're people first. I'm the parent of a 3rd and 4th grader. Teachers have been doing a wonderful job, right? They were sent home with their Chromebooks on Friday. That Monday, they were told they weren't going back to school, and they haven't been back since. And so it was a real shock for folks. Everybody's just kind of put Band-Aids on things and keep going. But we found that we can really fill a niche here for folks using that. And to that end, we're providing a pilot that can start now and run at no cost through January of 2021. We understand that budgets are tight and very difficult to get anything through. So we want to at least provide that service for you now so you can plan through the summer and then get on through into the school year, knowing that you've got a solid system with solid planning and solid help behind that. So architecting learning, this is something that's deliberate and done with purpose. And we believe that we have a set of solutions that can be agile regardless of what schooling looks like in September. And we all know that it's not going to be a typical face-to-face type setting. So just a little bit about me, Dave Barclay. I'm here in what has turned out to be cold upstate New York, just north of Albany. I'm a former IT director and classroom teacher, so I understand a lot of the problems that schools are facing right now. I'm still in touch with a lot of those folks. And so a little bit about the company Hapar. We were founded in 2011 in New Zealand, and we've got offices all over the world, in the UK, several in the United States. So we're really a global company serving over 2.2 million users worldwide. So we've got a great, strong community that's very active in helping folks out. Today, we're going to take a look at Student Dashboard, which is, for those of you using Google Classroom, is a wonderful tool to help parents and students kind of navigate a very unfamiliar landscape. And I work with this with my own kids. I'm talking with other parents and principals and superintendents and tech directors. This is a very difficult time for them. And the more clearly we can present this information, the better our parents are going to be able to help our students and our children. Again, we've got a couple of other tools that can really help maximize what you're doing. Workspace, great for differentiate and personalization. If you're finding you've grown out of Google Classroom, Workspace can provide that as well. We've also aligned a number of these lessons with Common Core standards. So if you're looking for kind of a plug and play type thing, Workspace might be for you. And again, analytics. If you're looking for where inequities exist, if you're looking for where students may have gaps, analytics looks into your G Suite usage and can show things like, are there particular groups of students who are not commenting on work? How are we doing in progressing toward those 21st century skills? So again, analytics can give you objective data based on a number of demographic factors that you can then go back and say where there are gaps and then provide those supports and training for your faculty. So really quickly here, I just want to get into our main tool we want to talk about this afternoon is Hapara's student dashboard. For those of you that are familiar with Google Classroom, it's a great tool, but it can be a little noisy for folks and you're clicking and moving all about the page. Well, with Student Dashboard, we've gone with the concept that we want you to get anywhere within just a few clicks. So upon logging in, this is what the student is presented with. They've got their to-do list. They're looking at all of their classes, and they can filter it out by all items, those that are overdue, those with due dates, and those with no due dates. This is going to be a very popular button for moms and dads, right? They're looking over their child's shoulder. Well, what's overdue? And here we go. We can see the due date than it was, the title of the assignment, and then again, the assignment itself. If we click on this, it's going to deep link into Google Classroom. So there's nowhere else for the child to go. It opens in a new tab. Child can do the activity or the assignment. Again, mark it as done, so nothing changes for them and how they actually complete their tasks. Close the tab, they're brought right back into Student Dashboard. Now again, we can bounce around very quickly between classes. So let's say I want to take a look now at my history class. Now I'm looking at my history assignments. And again, Google Classroom, it can tend to make people bounce around between the different tools. We don't want that. We want one simple interface that parents and students can navigate from home. And again, the great thing with this, there's no training for teachers. If your teachers are using Google Classroom already, they can keep doing everything the same. There's no training needed for them. They're behaving in the exact same fashion that they have all spring. Your students are going to see this and understand immediately how it goes. But again, we have some training videos and activities. So now I want to look at my notifications. I can filter by announcements, and then we can go right down to emails. And if you haven't seen a student's Gmail inbox, it's very messy. But here I can see my emails from my history teacher. I go right into deep linking in that message, and I'm right into the Gmail. Lastly, real quick, it's designed for mobile. So again, we're looking at my mobile phone. I can go right here into my returned work, click on that, and it's going to deep link me into Google Classroom. So now the child can go deep link into that assignment inside of Google Classroom and see what it happens to be. So again, thank you very much for your time. We'd be more than happy to chat further if there's anything else that we can do. Leilani, thank you very much. I appreciate my opportunity to present today.
Yeah, no problem. What I like is previous surveys that we did in terms of Learning Council major surveys, we found good 60% of the market had gone the Google Docs route. And right now we're hearing from a lot of them the mad scramble to do something about bringing order to that, because it's pretty messy and it's gone quick, crazy and wild. And then there's this call now at the administrative level, and I'm sure the panelists are going to talk about this. So this is an interesting play. I'm glad you shared. Okay, so I want to sort of share a couple of things with you guys to tee up what the panelists will be talking about. First of all, in the last couple of days, we've given a lot of data out of what's happening out there in the world. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild out there. A lot of complications. I got this email from a good friend of ours, Terry from Element Education. You can see her up there on the top left of your screen. San Diego Unified is already starting to talk about the fact that they're looking at cataclysmic loss of enrollment going into the fall for a number of reasons. Another article is more than 40% of families saying they're likely to homeschool now going into fall. So this is a moment where we have to get our act together and do things that are really well organized and well scheduled, and they're easy. Like Apar was just talking about, parents can easily follow what the heck's going on with all the student learning. So this couldn't be a more critical topic about how you're doing this specifically from your schedule on out. So our K-12 purchase interest from the big survey that we just did shows that this market's on the move to purchase a lot of stuff. You guys out there in K-12 land, you're looking at how you're going to organize your learning management. You're looking at curated content libraries because the teachers are already overwhelmed. They don't need to be doing lesson planning right now for every single thing. They need to be given resources out of the box, consumer grade stuff, digital courses, adaptive digital courseware, tool apps. You can see this is phenomenal. This is a huge shift from what the Learning Council was seeing in the past. So these are the top concerns to our panelists today. Will the students come back? What's your take on that? Have you surveyed yet? And then how are you going to do this scheduling? How are you going to space kids out? Are you going to have the same number of kids on buses, less kids per classroom, rotational schedule, some kids in one day, some kids not in other days? What are you doing with social emotional? How are you thinking with synchronous and asynchronous environment, even into the lesson planning? Pretty much content's going to be delivered primarily through devices now. That's what most of the districts are telling us. And are you going to stay whole group, or are you going to go more towards individualized? How are you talking about teacher roles? And then, of course, what are you doing with professional development? This is no small, big bag to throw at you. I mean, this is an amazing amount of things to consider. Heather, I know you're ahead of the game. I'm going to have you go first and share, and then call on Jeff and Daryl, kind of working our way across the screen. Tell us a little bit about your structure and then what your thoughts are going into the future.
Sure. So hello, everybody. Happy to share our experience here. We were very fortunate in that we had been working towards using a blended learning type environment. Our high school was fully online already. And we had been running teacher training on blended learning instruction for probably the last 4 years now. So we had some capacity to build on. That being said, it still was a heavy lift to go to full distance learning. And we managed to do that in 48 hours and still provide new instruction to our students and daily lessons, and kind of work towards keeping things moving forward rather than let's just provide some kind of social content. So we are looking at moving forward from that model into next year, though, and saying, well, we can't just have a couple hours daily of, maybe a teacher logs on like it was during distance learning and checks on how they're doing, gives a little bit of instruction, and then the rest of it is up to the parent to complete at home. And that may take, depending upon the ability of the child, less than an hour to an hour and a half a day or so. If we're going to be launching with real learning going forward and starting the year, we need to have a robust school. So we're actually planning for multiple models. We're hoping that all of our students will come back. We're preparing to send out a survey and find out, but we're thinking we will probably have the majority of students come back, and we're looking at doing a modified schedule. We're not really sure what that will look like. We're collecting feedback on they prefer a couple days per week in person, and we would rotate which kids on which days, or half day, AM, PM kind of style, or a variety of combinations around that. But in addition to that, we're also thinking that as you may have a COVID spike or something, we may need to shut down a classroom or a building within a school, or an entire school, but not the entire district. And so we need to be prepared for distance learning, or even preparing for simulcasting what is happening in the classroom should there only be a handful of students that need to be out and the rest of the class can continue on, and it's a short-term kind of environment. So we're looking at working on that. And then probably our biggest adventure right now is to develop a virtual academy that's a partnership with parents. So maybe something along parent partnership virtual academy that would be a combination of online schooling and teaching via the web and asynchronous learning opportunities that would be a really robust homeschool model that provides parents with a much greater support and partnership of daily instruction. We're looking at multiple times per day, especially in the younger grades, short teacher-led lessons with teacher-developed lesson plans for the parent to act as a co-teacher at home, and then provide the guided practice and monitoring that independent learning work and send that back over to the teacher. So then the teacher is following up with some individual sessions. So we're looking at that and saying that that would look like, for the youngest grades, probably 5 hours total between a couple hours of face-to-face time split up into small groups of time, and then 3 hours or so of parent-led or other adult-led instruction and independent work / homework kind of thing going on. And then maybe with our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders or up into high school, looking at it being more like a normal 7-hour day with 2 to 3 hours of time with various teachers, depending upon the subject matter, scheduled in over the course of the week. And that we would do it around individualized learning plans. We're planning to use the same digital curriculum that we already have in place. We already have our LMS in place. So that would be the same for students, with the idea being that this is a long-term commitment for parents. They would need to stay on for a trimester or a semester. And then should they choose to allow their child to return to the physical environment, they would be able to seamlessly roll back into the regular school system, and they'd still be involved in the same curriculum and all of those other things that we've been doing with our schools. And because we're a high-performing district, we think that our parents are going to be excited to have an option to keep their kids home and still receive the high-quality instruction that we are known for. I would say in terms of architecting this is quite challenging, even though I think we have some of the technical logistics in place, designing the instruction with teachers and putting that structure in place to make sure that this all works well is no easy feat. And then continuing to make sure that all of your system integrations on the back end are working seamlessly. Those are some of the big hurdles that we're looking at. So I think I'd leave it there unless people have questions and want to know more. We certainly do not have it all figured out, but that is our current adventure.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Dr. Dillon, your viewpoint of what you're doing up there in Idaho.
Our journey to blended learning, like Heather talked about, ours started 5 years ago. And putting it together, a process within the district where students, have the ability to engage online with their devices, as well as a project-based approach. We personalize learning for every single student, K-12, in our system with no grade levels and no bells. So our system was about the student and student learning, student progression, student pace. And our goal over the last 4 or 5 years has been focused upon teaching kids how to learn. That's goal number one, above and beyond content. If we can teach a student how to learn, we can teach them to learn for life. And so that's been our goal for kindergarten through 12th grade. And to do that, we've utilized the 16 Habits of Mind material by Art Costa Bidicalic. And when we teach kids how to persist, we teach kids how to manage impulsivity. We teach kids how to think flexibly, strive for accuracy, and be creative. Using those habits, we really begin to teach kids how to learn differently, how to learn based upon their skill sets and their abilities, their styles of learning. And because that was the focus and foundation, when we, had the notification that we weren't going to come back to school after spring break, it really for us was a seamless shift to learning from home, from on campus. And so we were extremely blessed and surprised as well at the same time at the engagement of our students online from home. And that gave us the ability to begin to think about the future and how we would proceed in a blended model from distance learning and on-campus learning. And we put together a pilot opportunity for our summer program in which our students were very excited to attend virtually as well as in person. And we had 75% of our high school students chose, that's right, 75% of our high school students chose to continue learning through the month of June. Because we taught them how to learn, we gave them the opportunity to learn, and they took advantage of that. And we had high percentage of our elementary and middle school students as well that are attending our pilot program. And it's giving us the ability to consider and think about the future of a hybrid model in which we could either provide on campus for certain students and distance learning for other students. And we're also looking at a model within our pilot where we have kids that rotate through, where we have a group of kids that are here on campus 1 day a week. And so that's a model we're looking at. But the bottom line for our students is they're in charge of their learning progression. And so it's about them engaging in the learning. And so what we provide could be a project, could be online. It could be a blended approach where they have online versus project approach. But we really, our win is going to be our professional development that we're developing currently for our teachers to be experts in a blended model from home and on campus. And also, I think I share with Heather really that parent support and training and professional development now is be focused on our parents and how we get them into the avenue and vein of professional development, just like our teachers. So it's going to be different for everybody. We're excited about the opportunity for us to take on this approach. We can look at it as woe is me, or we could take this challenge and say, I've got this, and we can make it successful for everyone, for all stakeholders. And so that's our plan moving forward.
That's great. I want to come back to you after I go over to Dr. Diamond, because a second round of question I want to ask about is this hurdle that you mentioned, and you've been doing it for 5 years, so you're there, of getting students to be autonomous learners, to actually have some self-direction embedded. That's not an easy lift. And there's even parent pushback on that. And if you're not there yet at all, because you've been in the whole group model forever, that is a long race for the other districts. So Dr. Diamond, you're in one of the larger districts, big, huge parcel of kids, different size of conditions that you're confronted with. Tell us what's happening for you and kind of where you guys are going.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Broward County Public Schools is the 6th largest school district in the nation. We have over 240,000 students and approximately 15,000 teachers. So anything we try to do to scale absolutely is not an easy feat at all. I personally supervise the instructional technology team, and I work hand in hand with our Office of Information and Technology. And that partnership ensures that all of our educational needs in the Office of Academics are appropriately matched up with the correct technologies. As a school district, we have a robust infrastructure that we've been working on for years now. We have a wide array of instructional technology applications that we train and support our instructional staff in its use. We are a Microsoft 365 shop, and we are a Canvas shop as our LMS. I think we all have to recognize that this transition was an emergency distance learning transition. I think all of us, regardless of size and regardless of readiness, this was not planned out. This is something that we just had to do. So I'm looking forward to creating the processes where we can actually reopen school in a much more orchestrated plan and take a deep dive into all of the things that we have available to us, so that when we come back stronger and utilize the technology stronger than we have. We have to recognize that some of our parents are not going to feel comfortable sending their children back to school. some of our schools. What do we do when and if an outbreak occurs at a school? Do you just send that student home? Do you have to close out the whole school? Those types of alternatives have to be looked at. We do have in the district and have had since 2000 a virtual school for K-12 students, Broward Virtual School. But that really was an option for students who really wanted to do virtual education. We don't want to necessarily come back and say that all students are going to become virtual school students now, because not everybody learns best in that environment. And that goes into what Dr. Dillon was saying about the self-awareness and the ability for students to self-motivate in order to be successful in an online environment. I can tell you that on March 13th, when we decided that Friday that we were closing schools, we were a week before spring break, and we were about a month before third quarter closed. So the first hurdle that we had was, let's get to the closure of our third quarter. 56% of our teachers at that time were utilizing Canvas with published courses. By the time we got to April 15th, we were at 98%. So a lot of daily webinars were going on and one-to-one facilitation with a lot of different departments in the Office of Academics, meeting with teachers and helping them identify content and get their content up in Canvas. Now that we've gotten through that hurdle, the next hurdle is when we come back in whatever model that should be, how do we train our APs and our principals so that they know how to recognize good teaching and learning in this virtual environment? So that's a focus that we are really beginning to build some structure around right now. I think that we are going to have to come back in a hybrid model, there's no doubt. And one of those hybrid models could be a double session where you have an AM and a PM session. That is good in terms of our students on free and reduced lunch. We can ensure that they get food on a daily basis, but there's an increase to our transportation costs around that. The other hybrid model is considering AB days, where some students come on Monday and Wednesday, other students come Thursday and Friday, and perhaps everyone is home on Friday. There is a savings on transportation there, but there's huge issues from our parent communities who need to go back to work in terms of childcare. So we have currently in Broward County some work streams that are looking at our strategic plan and how we now have to revise that strategic plan in this new abnormal that we're going into. And I think that this kind of conversation is really extremely valuable because we don't need to be building all of these by ourselves. We can be in collaboration with others. So I think this conversation, Leilani, is extremely important.
Yeah, that's great. I want to make sure everyone on the call today knows we've asked Central Bucks, who is developing sort of a schedule, and they've shared some things with us already. We'll share those out with everyone. And Fresno Unified was on another webinar the other day sharing their strategic plan top line points, which I think is really important. California is doing some interesting things. I do want to mention in this bucket, like you said, Dr. Diamond, is the fact that we have many years, 25, 30 years of seeing that distance learning alone lost a lot of kids. So the hybrid is the question of how you pull in what I like to say are the extrovert kids, the AWOL kids who just think school is stupid if you don't get to be together, versus a lot of school superintendents telling us right now, the introverted kids are getting more engaged. They're seeing kids who never spoke up in class doing more digital engagement than they ever did when they were on campus. So we're in a really interesting moment to be alert to. Just watch what's actually happening, who's out, who's in, what's happening, and what this all really means for where you have to go with hybrid. And then you have this other issue of equity, which everyone brings up, and Learning Council is doing a lot behind the scenes to drive that issue forward, even legislatively. But you've all said really interesting things, and I think what we're moving to, no matter what hybrid model you're going down the road of, you're loading on the back of a student and parent a real self-directed autonomy, more, maybe not totally, but more than we've had in the past. Whereas we've had, 150 years of you just arrive and then things are done for you, and you move along the conveyor belt and you arrive and given your stuff and you sort of just do that. This is a really heavy lift for people to get used to. So can I come back around to each of you and just have you talk about that? And then Dr. Dillon, also someone asked the size of your district, but I'm going to go to Heather first, so I'll come back to you in a second. Heather, can you talk about that? Because you guys have been ahead of the curve already with disaggregated service and kids. You pulled in homeschoolers who also wanted to be on the football team, but they're hardly ever on campus anyway. Talk to me about that issue of autonomy.
Thanks, Leilani. Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and it speaks to that whole thing that there are different avenues that really meet the needs for students in different ways. There's no one path that is going to be really effective for every single child. One of the other things that I've had a lot of individuals, as I've been collaborating, mention is that we've had students who have special needs learners, might be in resource or something else with a disability, who are actually making far greater progress in this distance learning time that we've had, because they do have a parent who's going over the work and their resource teacher is checking in and supporting them, and they're feeling more comfortable in participating in the work without the pressure of feeling behind their classmates and peers in class. So that's been a really interesting learning event. And then to see our gifted learners finish so quickly and not want to participate. And in my experience, a lot of our gifted learners are disengaging the most because this is stupid, because I can do the assignment that was posted really fast and be done. So I think, to Dr. Dillon's point, making sure that we're providing individualization in whatever we architect, and then providing a variety of choices for students to meet those introvert, extrovert kind of needs, what kind of parent support is available, et cetera, is really been forefront in our mind. And we started at the high school level with having, we have a fully online pathway that students can just do online schooling there. And we started to move that down into our middle school prior to the pandemic. And we know that for younger students, we don't feel like that is really probably the most effective option. And especially when we're looking at all of the early literacy and numeracy skills that require a lot of understanding of how to get across these points in kinder and first grade and second grade. At the same time, they have a challenge of paying attention very long and in an online environment. So how do we mix that instruction? And at high school, the same thing. So having the fully brick and mortar school that's completely digital, and then the online pathway, but creating a hybrid where students can say, well, I'm going to take these 3 classes online and I'm going to do these 3 things in person at the school, has been a great way, and it can be any combination of online and at school that works for that student. A great way for us to personalize high school and then start moving that into our middle school. So I think that some of that experience is what's driving the virtual academy, and then hoping to extend the virtual academy up into the high school as well, so that it's not an online face-to-face combination, but it's an online with teacher support and instruction at a much greater level than just independently paced, go through online independent modules. So I think one of the biggest things that we are recognizing, though, is the amount of communication that has to happen with parents. I experienced it personally on a whole different level, looking at, we use Canvas as our LMS, and I'm somewhat familiar with Schoology, and Google Classroom is in use. And my nephew is living with us. He's 12 years old, and I was going in and supporting his schoolwork. And I looked at it, and I'm looking at the LMS, and I'm seeing what the teacher said. And as an educated individual, to go, well, I'm not sure what the teacher wants. Well, I'm not sure whether or not they've given feedback if this is the expectation. And I'm not sure where the due date is because the teacher didn't post it really clearly. It was very interesting to experience it from the perspective of a parent and think, if I'm a highly knowledgeable educator in using digital technology for learning and I'm confused, how are our average parents trying to navigate and figure this out? So it was very clear to me how much we have to focus on clarity from the parent perspective, how much support and communication we need to put in, the consistency of structures and models, having some time for parent conferences in like a learning conference kind of meeting for setting up that individualized learning piece, that's going to be a really critical component of architecting a virtual learning model that is going to be highly effective for students.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that because Learning Council, we have our committee. Anybody on the call today that isn't an Edu Jedi and wants to join this committee, we're in the middle of architecting the digital learning experience standards because you just spoke of that intersection with what is quality UI UX, what are the pivot points of quality UI UX, because now that you don't have the 30 kids in front of you, you can't eyeball them. And you're directing attention not by going, hey, be quiet back there, quit passing notes. You're directing attention entirely online. And this is a very different model of instructional design. And it's not familiar to a lot of teachers as to what the meaningfulness of directing attention via digital. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. And anybody wants to join that committee online, let us know. Now we're going into a little bit more of a briefer response so we can get to some questions. So Dr. Dillon, autonomy, 5 years of helping create that. What was the beginning like, getting people on board?
Well, it's push-pull. I think it's knowing the why we're doing this. What's the purpose of the shift? What's the purpose of the change? What's the meaning for the staff in the change? What's the meaning for the students in the change? Looking at the end in mind was a lot of what we continue to focus on because we know the traditional approaches didn't work for a majority of our kids. I serve a population of 100% free reduced. We're a small district. We have 40% of our kids are English language learners. We have about 25% of our kids are migrant students, and we have 40% of our kids are mobile based on poverty. So we needed a better plan. And so that in mind helped us to make the shift to focus on every child counted. And every child, no matter when they came in, no matter what level they were at, we had to make a difference for those children. And so we began to build around relationships, and that rigor and relevance had to come from that relationship building with students and building the student capacity to be the driver of learning. And we really learned that the ability to connect with our kids here on campus was a significant impact, positive impact when students were at home. And additionally, we were able to connect virtually through video conference with students and their parents quite often. So it was a meaningful time. So hope that answers some of the question you had there.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like what you said because you just gave the silver bullet for the survival of schools. And that is the human cheerleader, basically, that is getting a lot of kids to get the thing done. You can't just log them into something and expect them to do it all, not like 5, 6, even high schoolers. You can't even expect them to get it all done. But you have a human. And so using your humanity is how you tackle this. And I love that you just said that. Okay, over to you, Daryl. And then we're going to have a couple of minutes left here to answer some of the questions that are coming in.
So I'm glad that I'm the last one because I'm listening to my two colleagues and they're giving me so many things to think about. Just from what Dr. Dillon just said, virtual learning does not mean that you learn alone. And I think that we have always stressed that there's a teacher behind that computer, even in a totally online course, so that students should not feel that they're learning alone. And that's the social emotional piece as well. We need to somehow enable kids to see each other and see their teachers, which is why the video conferencing component is so very, very important. 3 things that I jotted down as I was hearing my colleagues speak. One was choice, the other was personalized pathways, and the third was equity. Unlike Heather's experience with her ESE and her gifted students, I think that's where we got criticized the most here in Broward, It was felt that accommodations were not necessarily delivered, and we really struggled with our, highly marginalized students that really needed the most attention. In addition, our gifted parents felt that we weren't differentiating the instruction enough, that we weren't creating extension things for their students to do. What we have worked with Canvas is to develop what we call the SEPA app within Canvas, and it's an enhanced gradebook feature that allows a teacher to see all of the student educational plans in the grade column next to their student name. So if a student has an IEP, if a student is a 504 student, if it's an RTI-A or an RTI-B, if they're gifted, teachers using Canvas can identify their students, and therefore, when they are creating assignments and discussion boards and other things, they can build in those accommodations for those students. So having our teachers now learn about that, I think is going to really help us with those two groups of students. Going back to choice, I think that no matter how we come back, as a district, we want to give our students a variety of choices so that they have these personalized pathways that they can go down. So now how do we extend that notion of choice for students who right now might not feel comfortable coming back, but maybe 6 months from now want to? They might want to, as I think it was Heather who said, take a couple of courses online, but the other courses they know that they need to meet with teachers for whatever the reasons might be. What about those parents who need to go to work, and no matter what, their students need to be physically somewhere, they cannot be left at home? So what kind of alliances are we going to make with our community partners to facilitate students? If we go into this A-B schedule, where can we have students housed on their off days? So creating this bucket of choice and being able to be flexible, so as students move in and out of different choice options. Like I said before, what happens if a student falls ill and can't go to school now? So they've got to go from one set of circumstances to another. And then the big piece, the umbrella over all of this is the equity piece. How do we ensure that all of our students are getting access to high quality content and high quality instruction? And I think that the technology is there to help us do that. I know the Office of Academics is working right now on creating a Q1 coursework so that teachers can go into the Canvas Commons and pull that into their Canvas instance. So at a bare minimum, this is the ground level of what all teachers in grade 3 should be teaching. All teachers who teach geometry should be teaching. And then they have the flexibility of enhancing those courses and changing it. So I think that those are going to be the top 3 issues that we're going to be dealing with as we try to figure out how to schedule all of this.
Yeah, because that's the real issue. And we're going to be bringing up on tomorrow's panel a little bit more deeper into the organizational structure. Is it true we could do things like create houses like Harry Potter World everywhere so that we isolate a little bit more any potential resurgence of COVID, and a number of other sort of things that have come up, including what we call the Uberization of learning. Where's that going? And thank you so much for your comments, Dr. Diamond, Dr. Dillon, and Heather. I want to call now Kent Mickle. I'm going to unmute you to ask your question.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kent Michael. I'm a teacher at Penn Harris Madison, Indiana. So I just wanted to ask real quick, thinking about moving forward with, there were so many things I felt that came at teachers this year with the COVID-19, with resources, and so many companies were gracious enough to offer free passage and free information. I'm curious, when you are looking at your instruction models for next year for teachers, especially thinking about blending models, what will you use as kind of a meter stick to know, out of all these things the teachers were trying, which ones are worth kind of moving forward with? What measuring stick we use to say, yeah, this technique, this process, the software, whatever, was helpful and this one wasn't? Given that we don't really have time to look at any kind of student data as far as testing goes or anything like that, it's going to really, what we use, how we do that.
Yeah, Dr. Diamond, you want to go first?
Sure. We in Broward have narrowed down our software to a menu of choice already. And we had been building content utilizing those instructional software applications. So we do have a good bit of data to support its use. So now what we are really struggling with, what we are struggling with is to make sure that teachers know how to utilize this within their Canvas course so that we get more engaging and interactive coursework rather than just some teachers putting up very dry instructions that kids do paper and pencil and then somehow share that back via email with their teachers. So the struggle now is to really help develop the capacity of our teachers to utilize these instructional digital tools to enhance the learning environment.
Dr. Dillon.
I agree. Majority of our content either developed internally or platforms we've used for a while. We know they're successful. So it helped not trying to figure things out in the near future with a blended learning model, trying to find something new and trying to train teachers as well as students on those models. So we already had ours in place. I do want to say just something here for leaders out there that I hope that we're not planning for short term come the fall or the year, that we really truly think about planning, preparing students for their future and not our past. And we should have been moving, but I think this is going to push us to move and think more about how we prepare kids for their future.
Totally agree with you. Heather, comment on that?
I would concur with both my colleagues on here. We had a highly vetted set of things that we use. We did have teachers who were using some things in the free version, and once it was opened up, they would give us access to their full amount now for free. We went ahead and encouraged teachers to use some of the apps we had already allowed to be used by choice that were free. And we sent out a survey asking, what did you find? If you could only have one or two additional tools on top of what we already are providing, what did you find the most useful, and got some good feedback around that to help us with moving forward. And luckily it was really similar to what we had surmised as well. So I felt good about that. I wanted to make mention of one of the things that we're using as we work with teachers is that good instruction is still good instruction. And we need to talk about not how do we use technology for instruction and how do we use tech tools for instruction. I think that conversation has to shift a little bit about how do we provide good instruction and use technology to do that. And that, you still have to have a good anticipatory set. You still need to have good checks for understanding throughout your lesson. You need to still have student collaboration. You still need to have engagement within that lesson, engagement within the content. So then the question becomes, once you've designed those aspects of what we know high quality instruction are, what digital tools can you use now to best promote that? And I think we've kind of come full circle. First we talked about good instruction in the classroom, and we do that with we have walking and talking rounds, instructional rounds going on. And then we talked about how to use technology tools and learning things, and it might make this engaging, it might help you with check for understanding, but we never talked about it in combination, bringing it back to if the desired outcome is impact on student learning, and we know what good lesson design looks like, let's just go at it from lesson design and impact on student learning, and then say what is the best tool for that desired outcome. And it seems like a slight shift in thinking, but I think it's really powerful in terms of teachers changing their mindset from saying, oh, I'm going to focus on learning to use formative more. Instead, they're going to think about, I'm going to really focus on checking for understanding more often in meaningful ways. And throughout my lessons, I'm going to pick the right tool that's going to be the best way to do that. Or I'm going to focus on providing really good anticipatory sets that engage my learner right off of the bat. What is the best tool out there for doing that for this lesson? And that, I think, will provide a more cohesive lesson delivery.
Good points, all of them. And I think we're looking at also a moment when the attention direction of what the teachers are doing. You're right. It all comes down to good instruction is good instruction. And the human connection is really, really powerful. I really would like to see all of the districts in America emphasizing that human connection more than anything else, because America's going to need to heal after all of this. And it's going to be one of the reasons parents will capitulate and say, okay, we're coming back to school. I'm not going to just opt out forever. Okay, so we're going to be needing to wind up here. I want to thank especially Heather Sherburn for being with us today. Thank you so much, Heather.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Jeff Dillon, thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, and thank you. Nice to meet Heather and Daryl.
And Dr. Daryl Diamond, remarkable. Thank you so much. Glad to hear of all the progress you're making.
Thank you all very much for having me, and I wish everybody well.
Apara, Dave, you want to say a final word?
Yeah, thank you so much. And we wish everyone the best. And if we can be a positive force in helping you to have a successful fall in September and moving forward, as Dr. Dillon had mentioned, we'd love to chat. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for underwriting. So that's going to be the completion of our hour here. This is Leilani Cawthon, your host from the Learning Council and the Edu Jedi Leadership Society. Tomorrow, we're going to go a little bit deeper into schedule and structure with some other ideas with our other panel, 3 new panelists on architecting hybrid learning, and we hope you can join us. Thanks for being with us, everyone, and best of luck to you.